Hi, I'm Arthur, and because of something a bit unprecedented, I'm going to be doing this video now instead of your regularly scheduled broadcast of Space Marine slop. Sorry, Mortarian. The short end is I was on stream with a good friend of mine, Mishmash Painting, which you should totally subscribe to, and I made the joke of the first person to donate $100 gets to decide what my next video is. Mostly just to help out a good friend, but also for the meme. So, someone did, and I reached out to her, and thus we have this video. Honestly, it was something that I wanted to cover for a while anyway, and I think it's something that we can talk about and have an interesting discourse about. Because as it stands, the topic for today is one that a lot of people like to talk about, and I'm fine with talking about it, so thanks, by the way, Linky. Also, like, Necron? Those are pretty cool, right? Some would say the coolest, though those people are usually obsessed with old man yaoi undertones that are an extensive part of the infinite and the divine, but that is neither here nor there. Necron are one of those factions that, weirdly enough, have their faction leader, and it's something that is pretty uncommon, actually. And no, I don't mean like the biggest leader in the faction, like say Gaskell Thraka, where even though he is technically the leader of the orcs, a lot of orcs just ignore him most of the time. But when I say leader of the entire faction, I mean every single sub-faction that is beneath them is basically under direct control for them. Leagues of Votann don't have anything like that. The closest we have for the Imperium is something like the Emperor of Mankind, which good fucking luck getting him in the game. The Orcs don't really have something like that, and the Tyranids, well, as we all know, it has a hive mind, so it's not like there is like the biggest bug out there. That'd be kind of inconvenient if we ended up finding it and killing it. Today we are talking about the Silent King, probably one of the most overpowered in lore and underpowered on the tabletop miniatures in the existence of the game. Lord Zarek, the one to rule over the Necron tier, doom their society, and then come back over 1,000 years later in order to help keep them happy is, well, he's kind of a nice guy, actually. Before we get into it, remember to subscribe and like if you want more Xenos content. Use code BONEZONE for 10% off gamer subs, or click the link in the description, and let's boogie. The Silent King is actually a pretty important title rather than the name of the guy itself. Same with Zarek. See, once upon a time when the Necron were actually the Necron tier, there was this need for a steadfast and responsible leader to unite all the different dynasties, and at the top was the Silent King. See, if there's a sort of civil dispute between two heads of two different dynasties, there needs to be one person above them who can basically play the part of arbitrator so that they can figure out who actually is in the right and who actually is in the wrong. See, Necron tier politics are a bit of a mess. It always has been and will be a running gag in a lot of the more comedic Necron books that in the modern day, if a civil Necron discourse takes longer than, say, 10 years, then it was an exceptionally speedy affair. Though the Necron tier don't exactly have that kind of time, the traditions were still pretty popular and pretty common for the time back when the Necron tier were a thing. A fun practice was the passing down of titles between generational lines as well. Thus, the title of the Silent King was actually passed down from father to son, or so have you. And because of that, there was also some political disputes there about who should be the proper successor and so on, but I digress. The name itself comes from a mixture of the tradition as well as a decent practice, at least in my opinion. The Silent King had a couple people directly under him, the highest ranking members of his court, that he would speak to in order to issue orders, and they were the only ones who would ever hear him speak. No one else would ever hear his voice, as well as the orders he would pass down through delegation, and thus it would make things a bit funny if some people wanted to worm around with this, as there was, on the odd occasion, intentional misinterpretation of what he was requesting, I would assume, though I doubt that actually happened because it usually would lead to a swift execution. But I think that shows that he's such a great leader in comparison to the majority of 40k historical figures, because he has the one skill that most of them have failed to master, which is the ability to properly delegate tasks to people beneath you. So there is that. The Silent King is responsible also for striking the deal with the Catan to transfer the minds of the Necron tier into the bodies of the Necron to, save their dying society, as they were all dying from super melanoma, and thus damning them to soulless immortality that a lot of the Necron tier would either love or hate, depending on your political stances, or become whatever Destroyer was, but we don't really talk about Grandpa's omnicidal sundowning episodes. We just kind of let him ride those out until, well, either everyone's dead or he is. Regardless, the Silent King cursed his whole race to a doomed existence of metal and big sad. What happened next was basically his revenge world tour, because apparently being tricked by the Deceiver into getting your soul removed is what we call in the books a kind of a dick move, and thus the Silent King, still possessing his faculties, decided to create a weapon so powerful that not only could it kill a god, but in certain settings it could actually shatter the Catan, because, well, you can't really kill a Catan or weird funky shit starts happening to the universe, which, as much as I like weird shit, you don't want the weird shit that comes from killing a Catan. With the Catan shattered, the Silent King realizing he had still complete control over the Necron, he was left with a decision to make. Do I keep this weird command protocol intact, where if at any point he decided to, he could exert actual literal control over the bodies of the individuals as they were robots tied to his will, or do I just let them do whatever they want and bring back all the Necron civil disobedience and arguments that came with it? Now, for the most part, most people in the 40k setting would kind of see that giving them their free will offers literally no benefits to themselves, so they would never let it go. But for some reason, the Silent King let them have their free will, be it grief, be it what have you, but he did it. And I think that was kind of a nice move. Once that was done and he gave them their free will back, he ended up destroying the weapon that could shatter Catan and removed it from the memory of all the Necron who saw it, so that no one could ever create something so horrible again. And once that was all done, he fucked off to a different galaxy and wanted to see what the universe had. Which, what the universe had was, bugs. The other universe had bugs, which apparently was so frightening that he came back to warn everyone that the Tyranids were such a big threat that the Necron needed to band together in order to fight the bugs back. Once again, he could have just probably fucked off to the other side of the universe and left them to rot, but Big Daddy Zarek decided to come back and just, well, be kind of a chill dude and guide people to a brighter and safer future. Now, sure, part of that is vaporizing the rest of the universe to claim space to prepare, and also if the Tyranids eat all the biomass and all the people that were in there, there'd be nothing for the Necrons to transfer their consciousness back to, but he's still doing what is ostensibly the lawful good for a 40k ruler, so do with that what you will. Wanting to see the best result for your people and all that, which is kind of a unique trait, to be honest. Unfortunately, because this is no longer 9th edition we're in, the Necron lore has been brushed aside for the next Xenoon focused, and since it's Tyranids, GW is obviously doing this so that they don't have to write any lore for the Tyranids as well, which is, pretty easy, because having an entire first-person narrative from the perspective of a Tyranid would be either grisly or kind of funny, with the constant utterance of "I'm cold" or "I'm hungry." There have been some interactions that I've read about. The main one that a lot of people know about is the time that he met up with Commander Dante wearing a mask of Sanguinius, which causes so many questions to be raised, as that's canonically kind of impossible, or there's some kind of breakdown in communication in the Black Library. So I debate that it's even canon, because a lot of these things are usually just one-offs that are never going to be referenced again, so yeah. Another thing I want to point out, or rather something I want to elaborate on, is a point that a lot of my friends make, and it's that Zarek is often referred to as Primarch tier, which is absolutely bullshit! This man should actually be Emperor tier, because, well, he was responsible for the destruction of the Catan, which is not exactly easy. I'm pretty sure one of the Emperor's biggest feats wasn't even destroying one. It was wrestling an admittedly powerful shard of the Void Dragon into submission and sealing it away on Mars. A shard. One of them. The Silent King, albeit with the help of a super weapon so powerful he mind-wiped an entire species, was able to take on all of the Catan can before they were sharded and then shard them so that the Emperor could fight one. So I think it's kind of inappropriate to say that Gilliman is on par with the Silent King when it shouldn't. It's Coughing Baby versus Hydrogen Bomb, you know? And hell, who's to say he couldn't just remake said weapon now? Sure, the Emperor has probably the psychic might of thousands of years of constant worship, but like, Zarek has a cool chair, so he probably is on par with the Emperor right now. Which kind of gives me a good segue into my final statement I want to make about Zarek. This model f***s so hard. It is such a good centerpiece model, and the only thing I think that holds it back a little bit is that it's so cool that every time I've gone to a tournament and seen people play Necron, he is always there. He is such a popular model that a lot of people just scoop him up. Thus, you get kind of tired of seeing him all the time. But it's still such a beautiful model. The little design elements of him being just a huge Necron, the power source of a screaming Catan, his little buddies plotting horrible things. Mwah. Beautiful. Regardless, I hope there are more stories about him soon, as the Silent King is just such a fun character and deserves more than what he gets. Though I do also want people to stop comparing him to Primarchs when he is quite a bit stronger than that. Just a smidge, I might add. So, what do you all think about the Silent King? You know the routine by now, let me know in the comments, especially if you want to see more Xenos leaders and Xenos factions covered like him. Special thanks to my channel members for supporting me, and if you want to support me, the channel, pay for my editors so I can get these videos done in a timely fashion, as well as just content improvements, then support the channel by becoming a member. You also gain access to 2 additional videos a month. Thanks again for watching, and if you subscribe to Mishmash Painting and we get him to 20k subs, I'll do a full Talons of the Emperor breakdown video. I'm not even joking.